afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Tabor. I am the director of Connecticut History Day, and it is my pleasure today to welcome you to today's conversation at noon at Connecticut's Old State House. We're really excited to have today's program. As I mentioned, I run the Connecticut History Day program, and today we'll be featuring some of the students who participated in this past year's program. This year, we were very excited to return to in-person contests for the first time in 3 years. Connecticut History Day is an affiliate program of National History Day, and it's a Connecticut Democracy Center program in residence at Connecticut's Old State House. National History Day is an academic program in which students choose a topic related to an annual theme, which this year was Frontiers in History, People, Places, Ideas. Students complete research in order to create a project of their own choice. Working alone or in groups, they can write a paper, build an exhibit, design a website, create a documentary, or do a performance. This year, close to 5,000 students in Connecticut completed a History Day project, with 1,217 students participating in one of 6 regional contests. Regional contest winners were then invited to the state contest, which took place at Central Connecticut State University. The students who finished in first or second place are now eligible for the national contest, which is taking place in a week and a half at the University of Maryland. At the state contest, students not only competed for the top prizes, but they were eligible to compete for close to 20 special prizes sponsored by a variety of organizations, from national ones like Mount Vernon to more local ones, including Southern Connecticut State University, Connecticut Council of the Social Studies, to name just a few. Our student participants do amazing work. I've been a coordinator now for 15 years, and every year I'm blown away by the creativity and the dedication of the young people who take part in CHD. Today, you'll have a chance to meet some of these incredible young people and to learn more about their History Day experiences. We also are honored to have one of our History Day teachers join us as well. I'd encourage any of you who are watching today's program to please feel free to ask questions in the comment section, as we will be asking them throughout today's program. Let's start the program by introducing the students who are joining us. I'd like to first introduce Abigail Yang, who won second place for senior papers. Her project was entitled The Founding Fathers of Military Medicine, How Hammond, Letterman, and the U.S. Sanitary Commission Crossed a Medical Frontier Through Policy and Organization Reforms, and she attends the Yang Homeschool. Next, I'd like to introduce Danaya Bostic, who won the Outstanding Entry related to an underrepresented Connecticut community sponsored by the Connecticut Landmarks. Her project was on Mary Townsend Seymour, rethinking the role of women and African Americans in the Connecticut political frontier. She participated in senior individual exhibits, and she attends the Wyndham Technical High School in Willimantic. Next, I'd like to introduce Takwa Badir, who, with her partner Sarah, won second place in junior group website for their project, American Sign Language, the impact it made on deaf people. And Takwa attends Medina Academy in Windsor. Next, I'd like to introduce Charlie McEwen and Liam McCormick. They won first place for junior group exhibit, and they did their project on Helen Keller, Changing How We See Disabilities, and they attend Old Lyme Middle School. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Noor Hassan, who also attends Medina Academy. And Noor, can you remind me what category you were in? Were you the group performance?
Junior individual website.
Oh, junior individual website. And we are delighted to have all of these students joining us today. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Ed Dorgan, who is this year's Connecticut nominee for the junior division for the Patricia Baring Teacher of the Year Award. He's been involved with National History Day for over 15 years. He is a sponsor for the History Day Club for Students in Connecticut's Region 10, which is the towns of Burlington and Harwinton. And though he works primarily with middle school students, he also serves as an advisor and mentor to students at the senior level and He also is one of our most dedicated judges at all levels of the competition. So thank you all for joining us. And Noor, I neglected to write this down in my notes. Can you just remind us what your topic was that you did for this year's History Day project?
Penicillin, the antibiotic breakthrough that impacted worldwide bacterial history.
Great. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. I thought I was a little more organized than I was.
It's okay.
To start with, I'd like to first of all thank all of our guests for joining us today. Today's program is really a celebration of an incredible History Day year, that we were back in person for contests and just all of the great work that was done by students. For all of our students joining us today, we have a wide range of topics that were covered that relate to frontiers in history. How exactly did you find your topic? Liam and Charlie?
So we found our topic by just like at first we thought we were gonna do like Tibetan monks and self-immolation because like I felt like that was just like an unknown topic and I wanted to do something that like people might like learn from.
And then we found out that there was no long-term effects on Tibetan monks' self-immolation.
And so what we did was our teacher had provided us with like a couple of useful like tips and tricks and like what topics were like good for this year and like what were some like Connecticut related topics. And we found out that Helen Keller actually lived in Connecticut for a few years and advocated here as well. And so we ended up choosing Helen Keller as our project in the end.
I love the local connection, and it's kind of amazing living in Connecticut how many interesting things happened or had people associated with our state. Did you find that local connection helped you with your research?
It was I don't know. It didn't really, just because she only lived here for like the latter years of her life, and like she was already like just done with all of her speeches and advocating really. Just that like since it was a close to us topic, it helped us like research, I feel, because like there's like a middle school named after Helen Keller and like all that stuff about Helen Keller here that like you might not be able to find in another place where she might not have lived, like California, for example.
Great, thank you. How about some of our other students? Yes.
I thought of the theme frontiers in history as something that continues to impact. So I was thinking, what continues to impact people today? What do they use today? So I thought of medicine. And I was really interested in medicine because I have parents that work in the medical field, and I thought it was really interesting based on their speeches they gave. So I started searching people who discovered medicine because I wanted to know its origin and how it would impact people today and maybe in the future. So I came across Alexander Fleming, and he discovered penicillin. And I saw that penicillin was a really big thing, that the first antibiotic that impacted people. And new antibiotics were derived from that drug. So I decided to choose that topic.
Or Abigail wanted to add anything about how you found your topics?
Sure. So I've always been interested in the history of medicine. And last year I read a book about the 1918 influenza pandemic. And I thought it was really cool how they started the focus on good science and like actual lab work and sanitation. And so I got into NHD through my AP US history teacher, and she was like, everyone, you should do NHD. But then she said our topic had to be limited to something related to the Civil War, which was not from the actual NHD contest. It was just from my class. So then I looked into the medical frontier around the Civil War, thinking that I would discover like that people had discovered, a cure for malaria or something cool like that. But instead I kept seeing the name Jonathan Letterman come up in my preliminary research. So I looked him up to see what he actually did, and he organized the first ambulance corps. And reading about that, I was like, oh, they didn't have an ambulance. So then I looked further into these kind of organizational developments, and that's what I ended up doing my topic on, which was kind of the organizational frontier during the Civil War, like the U.S. Sanitary Commission, William Hammond reforming hospitals, all that kind of stuff that's not strictly scientific, but was still really important to the development of medicine. So, yeah.
Abigail, you found something that, to be honest, is a topic I'm not familiar with. When you think of medical frontiers, or even hospitals, I think of Clara Barton or things like that. So I love that you found something a little bit unusual, not quite the usual suspects. And I loved seeing your topic, Denaya, that it was a local history, Connecticut history topic. How did you find Mary Townsend Seymour?
When I first was introduced to National History Day, I didn't know which topic I wanted to do, but I had a general idea of what I wanted to do it on. I wanted to do it on an African American female. So I did a quick Google search, and it gave me a lot of different African American women who, a lot of different African women who were very impactful. And then I found Mary Townsend Seymour, and I was never heard this name before, but she only lived a few towns away from me when she was still alive. So I found her, and I was interested in who she was or when she grew up.
It's really cool to find someone local that you feel like you can really relate to, not being far from where you live. So let me just ask all of you, was participation in History Day something that was required as part of your class, or was it something you chose to do? How did you participate in the program? Because we have students participate all different kinds of ways. Yep, Liam.
So for our school, participation wasn't necessary, but like we said, we found out about the topic, and we thought that it was an interesting because of how close, I guess, Helen Keller lived to where we are.
And then I just want to reword it a little bit what he said. So participation was necessary, except participating in the actual competition was not necessary. Like everyone in our school, well, at least in our grade, had to make either an exhibit, a website, documentary, etc. Everyone had to make something, but not everyone had to compete. But we decided to compete.
Takwa and Noor, is this part of your curriculum, or is it something you choose to do as an extra at school?
It's not, it wasn't like we didn't have to do it, but when our teacher gave us the opportunity to do it, we said why not? A new experience. For me, it's my first time doing it. For her, it's her
second year. And also I decided to join because I thought about the skills that I would gain researching, learning how to talk to people. And I thought this would help me in high school since we have really strict high school curriculum.
Anyone else want to share how you participated? Naya.
For me, it was a part of my class, my EC class, but it was only the regionals competition that was required and not the states one.
And Abigail, you mentioned it was part your AP history teacher encouraged you to participate. Was it part of that class or?
Yeah, it was part of that class, and kind of like Liam and Charlie, we had to make a project, but we didn't have to submit it for competition. But then I worked really hard on it, so I was like, why not?
Absolutely. So we have here I think good representation, not all 5 categories, the different ways that you can present your projects in History Day world are a paper, website, exhibit, documentary, and performance. So we don't have quite everything here, but we do have folks who've done websites and exhibits and papers. So I'm just curious, how did you choose what category you wanted to do in doing your History Day project? Liam and Charlie.
So what we did was we kind of just like looked at all the options and like surveyed them, what were the pros and cons of each, and like we saw that like exhibit had the most creativity, we felt like.
And we were originally going to do a website. Then we decided that it would have been more fun and we probably would have gotten more out of it doing a board than a website.
And I also looked at some of the websites from like past years, and they almost looked like bland. And I felt like with an exhibit, it could like really show off like what we wanted to do
and our creativity.
Yeah.
Great. How about some of our Abigail, our paper writer?
Yeah, sorry. I originally wanted to do a documentary because I've written papers for other competitions, so I was like, I wanted to do something new. But then I realized the time limit on the documentary wasn't going to let me say everything that I wanted to say. So I wrote a paper instead, and I did struggle with the word limit. But I thought it was really cool learning how to use footnotes in the Chicago style because I haven't written anything in Chicago before. And I enjoy writing papers because when you like convert it from notes to an outline and then an outline to a finished paper and then you go back in and nitpick everything, I think it's like I learned a lot from writing this paper, not just how to use footnotes, but like how to make everything flow, how to pack as much into every sentence as I can because of the word limit, how to pick out what's really important. And I don't think I would have gotten as much out of any other project, probably just because of the way my schedule and the way I learn is.
Nora, did you have your hand up for websites?
Yes. Okay, I just thought about it. Okay. I wanted to do an exhibit, but the thing is that I participate in science fair every year as a requirement in our curriculum, so I wanted to do something new. And for paper, I write too many things, so I just wanted to try something new that I would be creative with. And for a documentary, I would have to edit so much, and I'm not used to editing. So I decided that a website would match me the best because like I'm used to making websites from my past year curriculum.
Great. And how about exhibits?
I'm not really a technologically advanced person, surprisingly. I know, my day and age. So documentary and website I wasn't gonna be able to produce something good with those two. But the way that I found out I learned the best is visually. So I was able to not only teach others about my topic, but learn from it as well, better with an exhibit than with any of the other options.
I'm with you. The technology scares me as well. I wanted to ask Mr. Dorgan, we've been asking students about their participation, and you come to History Day from a slightly different perspective as a longtime teacher of History Day. How do students at your school participate, and why do you think it's important for students to participate in the program?
For the students in my school district and at my school, they participate through a club activity. I've tried some shorter types of research in our curriculum, but it wasn't set up through the written curriculum that would be part of the course. But as a club, it's something that the students, they find out at the beginning of the year. I do an introduction for students in grades 6 through 8 And those that decide to research, which I always find it very interesting that for students to do it as a club activity, and to do research and to spend work putting together a project when they don't have to. I always find that those who do remain in the club, they're definitely dedicated. They become like history detectives to try to solve some type of thing that they find interesting and to find out more information about it, especially if it's something that they never knew about before. And of course, trying to tie it to the theme. But it's always been part of our school district as a after-school club activity. And I just am always amazed that students that are willing to spend extra time after school and over the weekends and such putting together a project when they do not have to do that for the research. So.
That is amazing. And, I think one of the things to maybe explain to our viewers, when we talk about research, I'm not sure if someone has not been involved with History Day, if they understand the amount of research that you all have done in the last few months. Everyone's shaking their head like, oh yeah, we know what you're talking about. The amount of research that you've done, starting with secondary to kind of get the historiography going, moving along to all the primary research. Can you talk a little bit about your research process and what kinds of sources did you use? Where did you find them? And one of the things that this is kind of an add-on to that question. One of the things I love about History Day is that you can continue to change your project throughout the process. So I'm really curious what you added in between regionals and in the state contest. So I think Nora's hand was up first, so we'll start with her.
In participating in History Day requires a lot of research, especially searching for primary sources that match your project, and judges having a look at your project and saying, how do these sources support your project? So my process was that I had to stay up and all night searching for primary sources, going to old libraries to look for any documents or anything I could find, and that's how I was able to use documents and letters as primary sources in my website.
Did you have a favorite source you used?
Well, I used a journal for a research journal from Alexander Fleming, the discoverer of penicillin. And this really supports one part of my argument about who deserves credit for penicillin, as there was another team who took his work and continued it. And they were able to purify it and produce this. So I used that point for my argument. We also have to stay late at school just to finish researching our projects. It's a lot of work. And when you have to write the script, sometimes you're missing information, so you have to go back and look for more sources.
Liam and Charlie?
So our research process was probably a little different just because at first our board was kind of just all primary sources and then all secondary sources. I'm not sure if I said that. And then some primary sources sprinkled in.
Yeah, we had a hard time finding primary sources.
And then from regionals to states, we did not use a single thing. Again, we scrapped our whole board and just said, let's redo this. And yeah.
Yeah, we completely restarted on our board. But I think that it was definitely for the better, because if we were to use our board that we used for regionals, for states, we probably would not have moved on.
And what primary sources did you add in between regionals and states?
So what we looked at, we got the American Foundation for the Blind, which was it was our primary source, because on almost every single side of our board, since ours is a spinning exhibit, you would just see AFB.org, because they have all the records of Helen Keller's speeches. They have images of Helen Keller giving the speeches, and they just have more information about what she talked about and how she advocated for others. And so that was our main source. And then we did use a little bit of archives from the government to get letters written to Helen Keller and letters written by Helen Keller. But yeah, we mostly used American Foundation for the Blind as our primary source.
And we actually ended up calling
the American Foundation for the Blind, right?
Yeah.
And they gave us a little bit of helpful information about what other primary sources we could use to help our board get better.
Taco, did you want to share some of your research and the process you went through and where you found the best sources?
Yeah, so basically in the beginning, me and my partner, we focused the most on researching and finding information, not really like perspective. We just really focused on finding information and a lot of like details about American Sign Language. So we kept researching and finding different websites, and we came across this website that had over 100 different like deaf people that impacted like the world. So that was like mostly our favorite website. We started using that, but then by the end, like by the regionals, when the judges gave our feedback, they were like, "You don't have enough perspectives." So we started getting like a lot of interviews. We got like over like 6 interviews ready. We only put a few of them though because we didn't have that much space. And I feel like the interviews helped us a lot in perspectives, and we had enough perspectives that could help us in our project.
Great, thank you. Our senior ladies, either of you want to? Denaya, yeah.
Finding anything on Mary Townsend Seymour was really difficult for me, and which honestly surprised me when I first started it, especially considering since she is a Connecticut topic. And the class that that the class that I had to do this project for, we all went to UConn archives to do our research there. And the lady who pulled out the information for me said herself that there wasn't a lot on her. And what she was able to provide me, I could easily find on the internet if I really wanted to. So most of my information came off of the different sources I found off of Google. But I think my favorite ones were the letters that she wrote. And she wrote a lot. And I liked reading them because it was just nice to be able to hear something from her directly instead of what other people thought of her instead.
Did that help you kind of feel like you had a sense of her as a person, being able to read her own words?
Yeah, it made me feel like, because we hear a lot about Black history, but it's not different types of Black history. It's mainly just the same people being repeated over and over and over. And it feels like it's a lot. But when you actually sit there and you think about it, it's really not. So being able to read something from someone who isn't well known made me feel more appreciated, I guess, in a way.
Well, I can tell you every year I feel like I learn so much from students that as I'm going through topics and I'm always like, I've got to learn more about that, or introducing me to new ideas. It's really fabulous. Yes, Liam and Charlie?
Liam and Charlie have to sign out because they have to go to their next class.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you for having us. Goodbye.
We'll see you in a week and a half. Abigail, how about you with your research?
I started from library books that I found that are secondary sources. And I went through a lot of their like bibliographies and references and endnotes to see if there are any sources that are consistently repeated, or if I read a quote in the book that I liked and I would go look at the bibliography and see where it's from. And so when I started this project, I kind of had the perspective that secondary sources are better in general because they're like random words aren't capitalized. The spellings are all consistent. Kind of, it's just easier for me to read. But then through this project, I kind of learned to appreciate the value of primary sources because I ended up using a lot of primary sources written directly by the people that I'm writing about, like Letterman, and hearing their voices and their original words really brought a different perspective and like shone a new light onto it when I could hear what they thought about their projects instead of what other people, like historians now, think about their projects. Yeah.
Was there anything, well, and this is a general question to everyone, while you were doing your research, was there anything that you discovered that really surprised you? Or there was, and I think, Abigail, you mentioned the fact that you have to be very selective of what you actually include in your project, that you do so much research. You have to do the hardest thing, which is leave stuff out. So was there anything that surprised you, or was there anything you had to leave out of your project that you were like, oh, I wish I could include that? It was really interesting to you. And this is a general question for all our students. Go ahead, Abigail.
I'll go again. So this also ties back into your previous question about like the revisions between the different levels, regional, state, and nationals. So between regionals and state, the regional judges told me I didn't have enough perspectives or like background on my characters, and that was really good feedback for me because I had thought about including more background, but I didn't think it was necessary. And then so their like comments on how important context is really taught me a lot. And then between the state level and then revising for submitting it for nationals, turns out the state judges told me to include a lot of things that I had originally included, but then cut out because of the word limit. So then I had to find a way to like shorten them down and then cut out other parts of my paper to include them. So yeah, the word limit was really a struggle, especially because I like to read books, and I generally will read like novels, and I don't read that much like actual historical books, like besides for school. So I hadn't really had any experience with them. But then in my research for doing this paper, I discovered like people in the 1800s were actually really funny. They love their sarcasm. Their writing is really snarky and like subtly passive aggressive. So I found a lot of cool quotes and books, and it gave me insight into their characters. And there was a lot that I wanted to include, but that I couldn't. But two really funny things that I found were, one, the ambulance corps had a theme song, like someone just decided to write them a theme song, and I would have loved to reference it in my paper, but it's not really relevant. And then the second one is the U.S. Sanitary Commission, which was one of the main focuses of my topic, that kind of reformed sanitation in the Army and the hospital. They were the first civilian organization to partner with the federal government. So they discovered that soldiers weren't getting enough vitamins, and they were all getting scurvy because their rations were not good. So they came up with desiccated vegetables, which are these vegetables that they like dried and then squashed into a cube and then distributed to the soldiers, who would soak them in water and then kind of mash them up and eat them. And it was disgusting, but it gave them nutrients. So that kind of showcases the Sanitary Commission's like creativity and ingenuity when it came to providing for their own soldiers.
I'm dying to know what it was the theme song for the ambulance corps, though.
I found the sheet music on Library of Congress, so it's out there.
Awesome. That's great. Mr. Dorgan, if we have people watching right now who are sitting there thinking, gosh, I'm a teacher, my students could do this, what advice would you give to a teacher considering having their students participate in History Day?
Well, again, I know it's difficult sometimes, although with the new standards going to be coming out for social studies, maybe this would be encouraging it, but it's something that by having students do research and put together a project and then share those findings, it really does match some of the standards we have that are asking them to do for students to be involved in their learning, to do their research, share their findings. But even if it was done as a club, it's something that I think that it would just turn students on to, the history in the past. And sometimes history, I always find, is, as I'm hearing from the students that are participating today, is anything. So it's not, doesn't have to be just political or something that was involving in conflicts in the past. It could be about any type of topic. And of course, it makes it easy to tie to the theme. So, and that theme is something that I think it also inspires students, maybe for teachers, to try to do this, is to realize there's plenty of resources that are provided by the National History Day and different online resources and such. And of course, the Connecticut History Day yourself, you offer support for those teachers that may decide to start up this program or maybe add it to their curriculum.
Have you had, I know you've had over a decade of working with History Day, so you have, I'm sure, a lot of memories. Do you have any kind of special memories of students with their projects or research that they've done?
I had some students, and it was a few years ago that were looking into, I don't remember the theme for that year, but it was something that actually tied to the history of brain cancer. And one of the things with it is that they contacted a doctor down at Yale, New Haven Hospital, and a specialist, and they were, doing some communications email and getting information, and actually then recorded something that they worked into their project. And they were so ecstatic that when they won at the regional for their project, that was, again, I think it was a junior group exhibit, they were so ecstatic, they wore their medals the next school day around to their classes and such. So I just was really impressed with that.
That's great. I wonder if any of our students wore their medals to school the next day. You could admit or not. For our students, I think when we were chatting before the start of the program, everyone, this is your first year of History Day. What skills do you feel like you've learned this year and you'll take with you as you go on into your futures? Takwa, yeah.
I feel like definitely research and like how to find and like how to find good resources for whatever like project you're doing or anything. I feel like History Day really helped me with that because during History Day, like finding just like resources wasn't enough. We need to make sure that they're good and they're true facts that will actually be helpful in our website and our project. And I feel like also I've gained like social experience and like talking to people because I'm pretty much like a shy person and I don't really like that. But like during History Day, in a lot of interviews, I talked a lot because I wanted to get more perspectives and more of the people's opinions to be able to put them in our project.
So Nora, I think this is your second year, is that correct?
Yes.
Yep. So what skills do you feel like you've learned over the last couple of years?
Last year was actually my first year and I did not win, but the benefit that I got was learning skills. I learned how to talk to people in interviews, even though I didn't have enough time for that many. I learned how to do proper research, how to take important parts out of text and to put them on, display them in a limited short amount of time or words. And it actually helped me win this year because I had all the resources that I needed to know for History Day from last year. So I was able to use those to make a good project. And I look forward to using those resources again next year.
Great. And I'm sorry, I know your hand was up, Denaya, so if you want to go next. Sorry about that.
It's all right. From doing this, I learned that talking to people isn't as difficult as you make it out to be at first. Because when I was doing my interviews with the judges, I know for a fact that I overthought everything I was going to say before I actually spoke to them. And then when it happened, it felt a lot easier. I was a lot calmer when I was actually talking to them. So I think it helps you really not that I'm just overthinking it when it's not really necessary, which is a nice skill to have, especially when you get older.
Yeah, that's really true. Abigail?
Um, well, learning to read primary sources was definitely one thing. Sorting through notes, really focusing on the important things that are directly relevant to my topic. And then, as someone's already said, like learning how to highlight the parts that you really want the judges to notice, and bringing out like main proofs for your thesis and argument. So, research, I guess, and then figuring out and knowing how to present what's really important.
And Mr. Dorgan, how have you seen your students who participated? What skills have they built through their participation, have you seen?
Just to mirror, I guess, what the students today have said, but a lot of, again, yeah, doing the research and realizing that a lot of times it's not just going online to find resources, which seems to be over the years to become more the common habit, which is, again, it works well, but then determining what are the best sources, looking at, in some ways, determining who wrote the sources, where they're from, to determine any type of bias. But then also looking for sometimes some of those other hidden sources and realizing that you have to, maybe something offline. I've had students sometimes go to visit specific museums and such, or to visit even information, like say from the Connecticut State Library. So again, and I heard someone earlier mention about like the Yukon and checking for the resources. So it's not just the typical skills of research and just finding things online and hopefully understand, of course, not to do just a Google search and such and going through. But it's definitely building the skills that are in some ways beyond the expectations that might be in school. What happens when you're putting together a History Day project.
Thank you. And I just want to give a shout out that if any of our viewers have questions, to please feel free to ask any questions as we wrap up the program. I do want to give a shout out to Rachel Lendu, who is watching. She is one of our wonderful History Day teachers, and we really appreciate her years of participation. For everyone, for all of our students today, I'm curious if you were giving advice to a student who's starting next year on their History Day project, what advice would you give them to start off with? Abigail.
Start early. Start in October. Don't procrastinate. Make yourself a schedule. Like, I'm gonna have my outline done by, the third week in November. I'm gonna have my first draft done by like January, because History Day paper or any project is not one of those projects that you can do 2 days before, because to have a really solid project that teaches you, like the main point of History Day is for yourself, not to win anything, but of all the skills and the knowledge that you get from research. So you're not going to get anything out of it if you do it last minute.
Very wise advice. Nora.
So something my father would tell me is that hard work beats talent, and that if you go through no pain, then there's no gain in any of your skills or anything. So just know that it's better to start early on your project, because there might be some things that you come across earlier that you might not be able to find later on. And just know that all of the hard work you're putting in will give you a skill one day, even if it doesn't mean that you win. It just means that you get skills, and this will help you in the future, and maybe you'll win one day.
Any other advice from our now veterans? Yeah, go ahead.
Be proud. Like, you are participating in something that's helping others learn more about what you're interested in. And that's an amazing thing to want to do. It's something to be incredibly proud of, no matter how hard you worked on it. You did good job. You did a good job doing this. Even if you don't win anything and you don't make it, be proud.
That is awesome advice, because just finishing a project like this is a monumental undertaking. And you're right, everyone should be proud of what they've done. Takwa.
I feel like definitely start planning ahead of, like, when you start working, start planning what you're going to work on, what time, how you're going to do it, split it between you and your partner. So when you get to the time when you have to do it, you're not like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do now? Like, how am I supposed to do it? Look at, like, make a document and then look at the document, see what you're supposed to do. So you're organized and you're not like messed up in the middle of finding your resources and finding, like, in researching.
All very wise advice. We are getting to the end of our program. I really appreciate everyone joining us today and people getting a chance to meet all of you and learn a little bit more about your projects. But in conclusion, I'd like to ask everyone, including Mr. Dorgan, what was your History Day highlight of the year? Mr. Dorgan.
Just glad that the History Day competition was back in person. I think the students appreciate it, and knowing in the past, I'm sure that with your participants that this was their first year when it was done virtually. I think the students really missed out on seeing other student projects in person and also being able to have the judges ask questions and talk.
Nor.
I agree with Mr. Dorgan, because last year it was virtual and I didn't really like that because I didn't get a chance to see new projects or talk to people. But also, one thing I would be proud of, which was my highlight of the year, was to talk to judges, to tell them about my project, knowing that I worked hard on it and that I did a good job just telling from results or maybe feedback from judges.
Other highlights for folks? Abigail.
I think my highlight of my NHG process was when I finished my first draft, because I knew there was still a long way to go of editing and then cutting out like 400 words because I was insanely over the word limit. But like knowing there was more ahead of me, and then also being able to look back at all that I've done and having expressed my notes and my thoughts and my analyses into a coherent paper, that was my favorite part after the first draft.
Great. Denaya.
Sorry, my mic was being all weird. My highlight of the National History Day process was getting to see everybody else's, because restating what you said earlier, this is my first year doing this. So I had no clue what I was walking into. I had no clue what was going to go on or how everyone was going to act or what anybody's project was even going to look like. And I will admit I did search up examples of National History Day, like previous years. I think they might have been from before we went virtual. I'm not really sure, but it looked like a lot of fun. It looked like all these people coming together to show off what they researched and all their progress. And when I got there, I actually got to see their. I actually got to be there and experience it, which was nice.
Did we get everyone with your highlight? I have to admit, the being in person again was my highlight of the year. Just seeing people. I know in some ways it can be easier to do things virtually. You don't have to, Saturdays are busy, but it's great to see everyone's work together and to learn from each other, which is a really exciting thing. Well, I have enjoyed spending time with everyone today, chatting about my favorite thing in the world, which is National History Day, as people who know me know. And we are now, we're not yet finished with our History Day year. We will be going to the national contest, which is held at the University of Maryland in a week and a half. We have 47 students who will be part of Team Connecticut, some of the folks who are on today's program, and Charlie and Liam as well. You can all follow, those of you watching today's program can follow along with us on social media as we post from each day of the contest. And I just want to thank all of our students and teachers for joining us today. And we really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.